In a quiet, tree-lined suburb stood one of the most prestigious private schools in the area. It was a place where children from wealthy families came to learn, grow, and prepare for their futures. Among these students was Naomi Carter, a 12-year-old girl who had recently transferred to the school. Naomi wasn't like many of her classmates. She didn't wear flashy designer clothes or brag about expensive vacations. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that made her stand out in ways she didn't even realize. Naomi's mother, Jada Carter, was married to none other than Will Smith, one of Hollywood's biggest stars. But Naomi didn't want anyone to know about her famous family. She wanted to be treated like any other kid, a normal girl trying to find her place in a new environment. At her old school, Naomi had been surrounded by friends who loved her for who she was. Here, however, things felt different. The hallways were filled with whispers and judgmental stares, and Naomi often found herself feeling invisible. On this particular day, Naomi decided to wear a dress her mom had picked out for her during their last shopping trip together. It wasn't overly fancy. It was simple yet elegant, with soft floral patterns that made Naomi feel special. To her, it was more than just a piece of clothing. It represented the bond she shared with her mother. As she walked through the crowded hallways toward her locker, Naomi tried to ignore the curious glances some of her classmates gave her. She kept her head down, focusing on getting through the day without drawing too much attention to herself. Recess came around, and the students poured outside into the sunny playground. Naomi sat on a bench under a large oak tree, flipping through the pages of her favorite book. She enjoyed reading because it allowed her to escape into worlds far away from the pressures of school life. While other kids laughed and played tag, Naomi preferred the solitude of her own thoughts. But peace rarely lasts long when you're the new kid at school. Chloe, the self-proclaimed queen bee of the 6th grade, strutted across the playground with her usual entourage of followers trailing behind her. Chloe was known for being loud, bossy, and often cruel. She thrived on making others feel small so she could feel big. Today she seemed particularly restless, searching for someone to target. Her sharp eyes landed on Naomi sitting alone under the tree. A smirk spread across Chloe's face as she marched over, her posse giggling nervously behind her. "Hey, new girl," Chloe called out, her voice dripping with mockery. "What are you doing all by yourself? No friends yet?" Naomi looked up from her book, startled. She didn't say anything, hoping Chloe would lose interest and move on. But Chloe wasn't about to let her off that easily. She leaned in closer, inspecting Naomi's outfit. "Nice dress," she sneered sarcastically. "Did you get it from a thrift store or something?" Naomi felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she forced herself to stay calm. She knew better than to engage with someone like Chloe. Ignoring the comment, she closed her book and stood up, planning to leave before things got worse. But as she turned to walk away, Chloe stuck out her foot, deliberately tripping her. Naomi stumbled forward, catching herself just in time, but not before hearing the sickening sound of fabric tearing. Her heart sank as she looked down and saw the rip running along the side of her beloved dress. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. All around her, Chloe and her friends erupted into laughter, pointing and jeering. Naomi couldn't take it anymore. Clutching the torn fabric tightly, she ran toward the school building, desperate to escape the humiliation. She ducked into the nearest bathroom, locking herself in a stall as sobs shook her body. For what felt like hours, Naomi sat there, replaying the scene over and over in her mind. How could someone be so mean? What had she done to deserve this kind of treatment? The dress wasn't just ruined, it symbolized everything Naomi had been holding on to since starting at this school: hope, resilience, and the love of her family. Now it felt like all of that had been stripped away. Eventually the bell rang, signaling the end of recess. Reluctantly, Naomi wiped her tears and stepped out of the stall. She avoided looking at her reflection in the mirror, afraid of seeing how broken she must appear. Taking a deep breath, she straightened her shoulders and reminded herself of what her mom always said: "You are stronger than you think." With that thought in mind, Naomi left the bathroom and headed back to class. determined to make it through the rest of the day. But little did she or anyone else know. This incident was only the beginning of a chain reaction that would change lives forever. Unbeknownst to Chloe, she had crossed a line she couldn't possibly understand. And soon enough, the truth about Naomi's family would come to light, turning this seemingly ordinary school drama into something extraordinary. When Naomi finally arrived home that afternoon, she tried her best to act normal. She slipped off her shoes by the door and set her backpack down quietly, hoping to avoid any questions from her mom. Jada Carter was in the kitchen, humming softly, as she chopped vegetables for dinner. The aroma of garlic and herbs filled the air, but Naomi barely noticed. Her mind was still replaying the events of recess, the cruel laughter, the rip in her dress, and the burning shame she had felt. Jada glanced up from the counter and immediately sensed something was wrong. Naomi's usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a quiet sadness, and her eyes were red-rimmed as though she'd been crying. Setting the knife aside, Jada walked over and placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Hey, sweetie," she said softly. "What's going on? You look like you've had a rough day." Naomi hesitated, unsure of how much to share. She didn't want to worry her mom, especially since Jada already carried so many responsibilities. Between running charity projects, supporting her husband Will's career, and being a devoted mother, Jada rarely had time for herself. Naomi hated the thought of adding another burden to her plate. But Jada's warm gaze and comforting presence made it hard to hold back. Slowly, Naomi began to tell her story, starting with Chloe's taunts and ending with the tear in her dress. Naomi spoke. Jada listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to anger. By the time Naomi finished, tears were streaming down her face again. She expected her mom to offer words of comfort or advice, but instead, Jada remained silent for a moment, her jaw tightening slightly. It wasn't often that people saw this side of Jada, calm on the surface but fiercely protective underneath. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but firm. "Thank you for telling me, baby," Jada said, pulling Naomi into a tight hug. "I'm so sorry that happened to you. No one should ever treat you or anyone like that. We're going to figure this out together, okay?" Naomi nodded against her mom's shoulder, feeling a small sense of relief wash over her. Having Jada's support meant everything, but she couldn't help wondering what her mom planned to do next. Would they talk to the school? Confront Chloe's parents? Naomi wasn't sure, but she trusted her mom completely. Later that evening, after Naomi had gone to bed, Jada sat alone in the living room staring at the torn dress lying on the coffee table. Each stitch of the floral pattern seemed to tell a story, not just of the day's events but of Naomi's resilience and bravery. Jada's heart ached for her daughter, but more than that, she felt a deep-seated frustration. Bullying wasn't just a childhood issue. It was a societal problem that needed addressing, and while she understood that kids could sometimes be cruel without realizing the impact of their actions, that didn't excuse the behavior. Determined to take action, Jada picked up her phone and dialed Will's number. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful as always. "Hey, love," he greeted her. "How's my favorite lady doing?" Jada smiled despite herself. Even after all these years, Will's charm never failed to lift her spirits. "Hey, handsome," she replied. "I wish I was calling under better circumstances, but we need to talk." Will's tone shifted instantly, becoming serious. "What's wrong?" She explained everything: Naomi's experience at school, the bully's behavior, and her own feelings about the situation. As she spoke, Will listened quietly, only interjecting to ask clarifying questions. When she finished, there was a brief pause before he responded. "That's unacceptable," Will said firmly. "No child deserves to go through that. What are you thinking of doing?" Jada exhaled slowly, gathering her thoughts. "I want to visit the school tomorrow," she said. "Not as Will Smith's wife, just as Naomi's mom. I need to speak with the principal and make sure they understand the seriousness of this. If they don't handle it properly, then we'll have to escalate things." Will nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "You're right," he agreed. "But remember, babe, stay calm. Let them see your strength, not just your fame. You don't need to throw weight around to get results. His words resonated with Jada. She knew he was right. It wasn't about intimidating people with her celebrity status. It was about standing up for her daughter and ensuring that the school took responsibility for fostering a safe environment for all students. With renewed determination, Jada ended the call and began preparing for her visit. The next morning, Jada woke up early, dressed casually in jeans and a blazer. She wanted to blend in as much as possible, knowing that her presence might cause a stir once people realized who she was. Before leaving, she stopped by Naomi's room to check on her. Her daughter was still asleep, curled up under her blanket like a little cocoon. Jada kissed her forehead gently, whispering, "This is for you, sweetheart." At the school, Jada approached the front desk with confidence. The receptionist greeted her politely, asking how she could help. "I'd like to speak with the principal," Jada said calmly. "It's regarding an incident involving my daughter, Naomi Carter." The receptionist nodded and buzzed the principal's office. Within minutes, Jada was ushered into a small meeting room where the principal, a middle-aged man named Mr. Thompson, was waiting. At first glance, he seemed oblivious to Jada's identity, treating her like any other concerned parent. They exchanged pleasantries before diving into the reason for her visit. "I came here today because my daughter experienced bullying yesterday," Jada began, her voice measured but firm. "A classmate deliberately tripped her, causing damage to her clothing and leaving her deeply upset. I want to understand what steps the school plans to take to address this." Mr. Thompson frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm very sorry to hear that," he said. "We take bullying very seriously here. Can you tell me more about what happened?" Jada recounted the details, emphasizing the emotional toll it had taken on Naomi. As she spoke, she noticed the principal growing increasingly uneasy. It wasn't until one of the teachers passing by the open door recognized her that the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A hushed whisper spread throughout the office, and soon everyone realized they were dealing with someone far more influential than an ordinary parent. Despite the sudden change in dynamics, Jada remained focused on her mission. She reiterated her demands: accountability for the bully, support for Naomi, and a commitment from the school to implement stronger anti-bullying measures. Mr. Thompson, now visibly flustered, promised to follow up promptly. By the time Jada left the school, she felt a mix of emotions: relief that she had spoken up, but also anxiety about whether real change would occur. Still, she reminded herself of Naomi's courage and resilience. This wasn't just about fixing one incident. It was about creating a better future for all children. And if anyone could inspire change, it was Jada Carter. The meeting with the principal had barely begun when the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. One of the teachers passing by the open door paused mid-step, her eyes widening as she recognized Jada Carter. She whispered something to a colleague, and within moments the news spread like wildfire through the school office. Whispers echoed down the hallways. "Is that really Jada Carter? Wait, the actress and philanthropist? Isn't she married to Will Smith?" Mr. Thompson, the principal, noticed the growing buzz outside his office and quickly realized what was happening. His demeanor changed almost instantly. Gone was the casual, slightly dismissive attitude he'd displayed at the start of the meeting. Now he sat up straighter in his chair, adjusting his tie nervously as he glanced at Jada with newfound respect, and perhaps a hint of fear. Jada, however, remained unfazed. She wasn't here to intimidate anyone or throw her celebrity status around. Her focus was entirely on Naomi's well-being and ensuring that the school took this matter seriously. Still, she couldn't deny the irony of the situation. For years, she and Will had worked hard to shield their children from the spotlight, allowing them to live as normal a life as possible. Yet, here she was, stepping into that very spotlight for the sake of her daughter. After explaining the details of the bullying incident, Jada turned her attention to the heart of the issue: accountability and prevention. "This isn't just about punishing one student," she said firmly, leaning forward in her seat. It's about creating an environment where every child feels safe and respected. Bullying doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's often a symptom of larger issues within the school culture. Mr. Thompson nodded vigorously, eager to show that he understood. Absolutely, Mrs. Carter, he replied. We take these matters very seriously. Rest assured, we will address this immediately. But Jada wasn't satisfied with vague promises. She pressed further, asking pointed questions about the school's current anti-bullying policies. Did they have programs in place to educate students about empathy and kindness? Were teachers trained to recognize signs of bullying and intervene effectively? What consequences were there for repeat offenders? As Mr. Thompson stumbled over his answers, it became clear that the school's efforts fell short. They had a basic policy outlined in the student handbook, but little beyond that. There were no workshops, no ongoing discussions, and certainly no proactive measures to prevent bullying before it started. Jada sighed inwardly, disappointed but not surprised. This was exactly why she had come, to push for real change. I appreciate your willingness to listen, she said, her tone calm but firm. But I need more than words. I want action. If you're serious about addressing this, I suggest starting with professional training for both staff and students. Bring in experts who can help create a safer, more inclusive environment. And make sure the parents are involved too. This is a community effort. Mr. Thompson hesitated, clearly unsure how to respond. Implementing such changes would require time, resources, and possibly even admitting that the school had been neglecting its duty. But before he could say anything, there was a knock at the door. A secretary poked her head in, looking flustered. "Excuse me, Mr. Thompson," she stammered. "Chloe's parents are here. They'd like to join the discussion." Jada raised an eyebrow, intrigued. She hadn't expected Chloe's family to show up so soon, but she welcomed the opportunity to speak directly with them. Perhaps this could be a chance to turn confrontation into understanding. "Please invite them in," she said smoothly. Moment later, Chloe's parents entered the room. Her mother, wearing a designer dress and oversized sunglasses, and her father, dressed in a tailored suit. Both looked nervous, glancing between Jada and Mr. Thompson as if unsure what to expect. When they finally removed their sunglasses and saw Jada's face clearly, their expressions shifted from confusion to shock. "Mrs. Carter?" Chloe's mother gasped, her voice trembling. "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize. We had no idea you were—" "It's fine," Jada interrupted gently, cutting off the awkward flattery. "Let's focus on why we're here. Your daughter, Chloe, was involved in an incident yesterday that left my daughter deeply upset. I'm sure you understand how important it is to address this properly." Chloe's parents exchanged uneasy glances. Clearly, they hadn't anticipated walking into a meeting with someone of Jada's stature. Their initial defensiveness melted away under her composed yet commanding presence. "Of course," Chloe's father said quickly. "We're very sorry to hear about what happened. We'll speak with Chloe right away and ensure it doesn't happen again." Jada nodded, appreciating their apology but knowing it wasn't enough. "Thank you for saying that," she said. "But apologies alone won't fix the problem. What matters most is how we move forward. I believe Chloe needs guidance, not punishment, to understand the impact of her actions. And the school needs to step up its efforts to prevent similar incidents in the future." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. Even Chloe's parents, who had initially bristled at the idea of their daughter being labeled a bully, began to see the bigger picture. They agreed to work with the school to support whatever initiatives Jada suggested, including counseling for Chloe and participation in anti-bullying workshops. By the end of the meeting, Mr. Thompson seemed genuinely committed to making changes. He promised to draft a comprehensive plan involving expert-led sessions for students and staff, as well as regular check-ins with parents. Jada left the school feeling cautiously optimistic. While she knew true transformation wouldn't happen, overnight she felt confident that her presence had sparked the beginning of something meaningful. As she drove home, Jada reflected on the day's events. It wasn't easy stepping into the spotlight, especially when she preferred to keep her family's private life separate from public scrutiny. But sometimes, standing up for what's right meant putting yourself out there, even if it made others uncomfortable. For Naomi's sake and for all the other children who might face similar challenges, Jada knew it was worth it. When she arrived home, Naomi was sitting at the kitchen table, working on her homework. Seeing her mom walk in, she looked up hopefully. "How did it go?" she asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. Jada smiled warmly, pulling out a chair to sit beside her. "It went well," she said. "The school is going to make some changes, and Chloe's parents are willing to help, too. But remember, sweetheart, this isn't just about fixing one problem. It's about making sure everyone feels safe and valued. You're helping to create a better world just by being brave enough to speak up." Naomi beamed, her earlier sadness replaced by pride. For the first time since the incident, she felt hopeful, not just for herself, but for the entire school community. And as Jada hugged her tightly, she knew they were on the right path. Change always starts small, but with determination and love, it can grow into something extraordinary. Chloe had always prided herself on being the center of attention. Whether it was her sharp wit, her designer clothes, or her ability to command a room, she thrived on the idea that everyone noticed her. But for the first time in her life, Chloe felt small, really small. As she sat in the hallway outside the principal's office pretending to scroll through her phone, she couldn't help but overhear snippets of the heated conversation happening inside, her parents' nervous voices, the principal's stammering apologies, and then Jada Carter's calm yet authoritative tone. At first, Chloe didn't fully grasp what was going on. She knew her mom and dad had been called into the school after the incident with Naomi, but she assumed it would be just another slap on the wrist, a quick lecture about being kind, and maybe a detention or two. That's how these things usually played out. But as she pieced together the murmurs coming from behind the closed door, something clicked. This wasn't just any parent meeting. The woman sitting across from her parents wasn't just some random mom. It was Jada Carter. Chloe's stomach churned as panic set in. She vaguely remembered seeing Jada's face on magazine covers at the grocery store checkout line. Or was it on TV? Either way, she suddenly realized why her parents looked so flustered when they walked into the office earlier. They weren't just dealing with an ordinary complaint. They were facing someone whose influence could ripple far beyond their little suburban bubble. For the rest of the day, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling of dread that weighed heavily on her chest. Normally, she breezed through school without giving much thought to her actions. If someone got hurt by her words or behavior, well, that was their problem, not hers. But now, for the first time, she found herself questioning everything. Why had she targeted Naomi? What made her think it was okay to rip apart someone else's confidence just because they were different? That evening, Chloe's parents sat her down in the living room for what she assumed would be another scolding. Instead, they surprised her by starting the conversation with quiet empathy. "Chloe," her mom began, her voice softer than usual. "Do you know who Naomi's mom is?" Chloe shook her head, avoiding eye contact. She didn't trust herself to speak. "She's Jada Carter," her dad chimed in. "You've probably heard of her. She's married to Will Smith." Chloe's eyes widened in shock. Of course she'd heard of them. They were practically household names. For a moment, all she could think about was how embarrassing it must have been for her parents to sit across from someone so famous. Then reality hit her like a ton of bricks. If Naomi's mom was Jada Carter, then Naomi wasn't just some random new girl. She was the daughter of one of the most powerful families in Hollywood, but it wasn't just the celebrity connection that haunted Chloe. It was the realization of what she'd done. Her mom continued, "Today we learned a lot about how serious bullying can be. It's not just kids being mean for fun. It has real consequences. Naomi went home crying because of what you did. Do you understand how much pain you caused her?" Tears welled up in Chloe's eyes as guilt washed over her. She wanted to defend herself, to explain that she hadn't meant to hurt anyone, that she was just trying to fit in and impress her friends. But the words caught in her throat. How could she justify ripping apart someone else's sense of belonging, just to boost her own ego? I didn't mean to." Chloe stammered, her voice cracking under the weight of her emotions. I don't know why I did it. I thought it would make people laugh. Her parents exchanged a glance, their expressions equal parts frustration and sadness. It's not about making people laugh, sweetheart, her dad said gently. It's about treating others with kindness and respect. You're better than this, Chloe. We raised you to be better. As the conversation unfolded, Chloe began to see herself, not as the confident queen bee everyone feared, but as someone who desperately craved validation. She lashed out at others because deep down, she felt insecure. Admitting this to herself was painful, but it was also the first step toward change. The next morning at school, Chloe hesitated before approaching Naomi during lunch. Naomi was sitting alone again, flipping through a book while nibbling on an Anka apple. Chloe swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She rehearsed what she wanted to say in her head, but when she finally opened her mouth, the words came out shaky and awkward. "Hey, Naomi," Chloe said softly, standing a few feet away. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Naomi looked up, startled. For a moment, she simply stared at Chloe, unsure of what to expect. Finally, she nodded cautiously. "Okay." Chloe took a deep breath, forcing herself to meet Naomi's gaze. "I just wanted to say, I'm really sorry about your dress, about everything. I didn't realize how much I hurt you, and I feel terrible about it. I never should have treated you like that." Naomi blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in Chloe's voice. She had expected anger or excuses, not an apology. After a long pause, she replied, "Thank you for saying that, I appreciate it." Encouraged by Naomi's response, Chloe pressed on. "I want to make it right. Is there anything I can do to fix things between us?" Naomi thought for a moment, considering her options. Part of her wanted to reject Chloe outright, to let her feel the sting of rejection the way she had felt it. But another part of her, the forgiving, empathetic part, knew that holding on to bitterness wouldn't help either of them. Slowly, she shook her head. "You don't have to do anything. Just try to be nicer to people, that's all I ask." Relief flooded Chloe's face, followed by determination. "I will," she promised. "I swear I'll do better. And if you ever need help with anything, or if you just want to hang out, I'd like that too." To Chloe's surprise, Naomi smiled faintly. "We'll see," she said, leaving the door open for future possibilities. Over the following weeks, Chloe worked hard to rebuild her reputation, not by asserting dominance but by showing genuine kindness. She started small, offering to carry books for classmates struggling with heavy loads or inviting quieter students to join her group during activities. At first, people were skeptical, wondering if this was just another act. But as Chloe's actions became consistent, they began to trust her. Meanwhile, Naomi found herself warming up to Chloe's efforts. Though she remained cautious, she appreciated the sincerity behind Chloe's transformation. Over time, the two girls formed an unlikely friendship, bonding over shared experiences and mutual growth. Chloe confided in Naomi about her struggles with insecurity, and Naomi, in turn, opened up about the challenges of keeping her family's fame private. Their bond became a beacon of hope within the school community, inspiring others to reflect on their own behaviors. When the anti-bullying workshops finally rolled around, both Chloe and Naomi participated enthusiastically, sharing their story with their peers. Together, they demonstrated that even the most fractured relationships could heal with honesty, effort, and understanding. By the end of the semester, the school felt like a different place. Conversations once dominated by gossip and exclusion shifted toward inclusion and support. Students who had previously stayed silent began speaking up, knowing they had allies in each other. Teachers noticed the change too, praising the newfound sense of unity among the student body. For Chloe, the experience was transformative. She no longer sought validation through cruelty. Instead, she discovered the joy of lifting others up. And for Naomi, it was proof that resilience and forgiveness could lead to meaningful connections, even with those who once caused her pain. Both girls emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before, setting an example for everyone around them. Though the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, they faced it together, determined to create a brighter future, not just for themselves, but for the entire school. Months had passed since the incident with the dress, and the school was buzzing with energy. The once tense atmosphere had transformed into something vibrant and hopeful, thanks in large part to the anti-bullying workshops that Jada Carter had inspired. Students filed into the auditorium on a crisp Friday morning, their chatter filling the air as they prepared for the final session of the program. Posters decorated the walls, bright, colorful reminders of kindness, empathy, and respect. Phrases like "stand up, speak out, and be the change you want to see" were plastered everywhere, serving as constant encouragement. Naomi sat near the front of the room, her braids neatly tied back and a small smile playing on her lips. She felt proud, not just because her mom's efforts had led to this moment, but because she could see the impact firsthand. Her classmates, who had once treated her with indifference or even hostility, now greeted her warmly in the hallways. Some even asked to borrow notes or join her study group. It wasn't perfect, there were still awkward moments, but it was progress. Naomi knew that change didn't happen overnight, but every step forward mattered. Chloe entered the auditorium, a few minutes later sliding into a seat next to Naomi without hesitation. Gone was the haughty demeanor she used to carry. Instead, she radiated humility and warmth. Over the past few months, Chloe had worked tirelessly to repair her relationships, not just with Naomi, but with everyone she'd wronged. She volunteered to co-lead discussions during the workshops, sharing her story openly and encouraging others to reflect on their actions. Her honesty resonated deeply with her peers, many of whom admitted they too had struggled with insecurities or peer pressure. As the workshop facilitator, a renowned psychologist specializing in youth development, took the stage, the room fell silent. Dr. Patel began by thanking the school administration and parents for supporting the initiative. Then she turned her attention to Jada Carter, who sat quietly in the back row, observing everything with quiet pride. "None of this would have been possible without the courage of one mother," Dr. Patel said, her voice warm and sincere. "Mrs. Carter, thank you for standing up for your daughter and inspiring us all to do better." The audience erupted into applause, and Jada stood briefly, nodding in gratitude before sitting back down. She wasn't there for the recognition, but she appreciated the acknowledgement nonetheless. To her, the real victory lay in seeing how much the students had grown over the course of the program. Dr. Patel then invited Naomi and Chloe to join her on stage. Both girls exchanged nervous glances before making their way to the front of the room. Naomi felt her heart race as she stepped under the bright lights, but Chloe gave her an encouraging smile, which helped calm her nerves. Once they were seated, Dr. Patel turned to them and asked, "Can you tell us about your journey? How has this experience changed you?" Naomi spoke first, her voice steady despite the spotlight. "At first I thought coming to this school would be easy. But when people started treating me differently because I'm new, or maybe because I'm different, I felt really alone. What happened with my dress was hard, but it taught me something important, that staying true to yourself is worth it, no matter what anyone else says." She paused, looking at Chloe before continuing. "And it also taught me that forgiveness can lead to amazing things. If I hadn't forgiven Chloe, I wouldn't have gotten such a great friend out of this." Chloe nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I used to think being popular meant being powerful, but I was wrong. Real strength comes from treating people with kindness and respect. Hurting Naomi made me realize how much pain I'd caused, not just to her but to others too. I'm so sorry for what I did, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make up for it." Her words earned another round of applause, this time accompanied by cheers from her classmates. For Chloe, hearing those claps felt surreal. Just months ago, she would have dismissed them as superficial praise. Now she understood their significance. They represented acceptance, trust, and hope. After the Q&A session, the workshop concluded with a group activity. Students were divided into teams and tasked with creating posters that illustrated their vision of a bully-free world. Ideas flowed freely as laughter and collaboration filled the room. One team drew a massive tree with roots labeled kindness and branches extending outward to represent growth and connection. Another created a comic strip showing kids standing up for each other in various scenarios. By the end of the activity, the walls of the auditorium were covered in creativity and optimism. Later that afternoon, Jada stood outside the school building, watching as students poured out into the sunshine. Many stopped to thank her personally, their faces glowing with gratitude. "Your work here isn't done," she reminded them gently. "This is just the beginning. Keep these lessons close to your hearts and remember, kindness is contagious." Naomi approached her mom, beaming with pride. "Did you hear what they said about the workshops?" she asked excitedly. "Everyone loved them." Jada smiled, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You've handled everything with so much grace and courage. This is your victory as much as anyone's." That evening, back at home, Will greeted Jada and Naomi with open arms. "How'd it go?" he asked, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "It went beautifully," Jada replied, recounting the day's events. "The kids are incredible. They're ready to create a better future, for themselves and for each other," Will grinned, wrapping an arm around his wife. "You've always been unstoppable, love. I'm glad the world gets to see it too." As the family settled in for dinner, Naomi reflected on everything that had happened. The ripped dress once, a symbol of pain and humiliation, now represented resilience, forgiveness, and transformation. It reminded her that even the hardest moments could lead to something beautiful if you chose to face them head-on. In the weeks and months that followed, the school continued to thrive under its renewed commitment to inclusivity and kindness. Teachers reported fewer conflicts among students, and parents praised the positive shift in behavior both inside and outside the classroom. The workshops became an annual tradition, ensuring that every incoming class learned the importance of empathy and respect. For Naomi, life at school finally felt normal, not because she blended in, but because she belonged. And for Chloe, the experience marked the start of a lifelong mission to uplift others rather than tear them down. Together, they proved that even the smallest acts of kindness could spark monumental change. As Jada tucked Naomi into bed one night, she kissed her forehead and whispered, "Never forget how strong you are, baby. You inspire me every single day." Naomi smiled sleepily, her heart full. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart, always." And with that, the lights went out, casting a peaceful glow over a household and a community that had come so far together.